rolling. This take two.
Just because I asked a friend about her, just because I spoke her name somewhere, just because I rang her number by mistake today. I still care. Well, just because I haunt the same old places, where the memory of her lingers everywhere. Just because I'm not the happy guy I used to be. Lord, 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 she thinks, you know, I still care. But if she's happy thinking I still need her, and let that silly notion bring her cheer. Oh, but she'll be so foolish. Tell me, where did she get such an a friend about her, just because I spoke her name somewhere, just because I saw her and went to pieces. Lord, 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 she I still care. Yeah, she thinks I still care. Oh, Lord, 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 she thinks I still care. Yeah, she thinks I still care. You know she thinks I still care. She thinks I still care. Lord, 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 she, you know she thinks I still care.
This is Elvis Online, and I'm Joe Crine. I have a singer-songwriter with me here today, Mr. Dickie Lee. Dickie, how you doing?
Hey, Joe, doing great.
Hey, Dickie, can you tell me where you were born and raised?
Yeah, I was born in Memphis, Tennessee, and I was raised there. In fact, I went to school there, and then I went to the University of Memphis there.
Now, didn't you live in Whitehaven way back then?
Right. Yeah.
Could you tell me a
I,
little?
I went and went to Whitehaven School from the 1st to the 12th grade, and lived out there until I was till I went away to school in Memphis.
How was Whitehaven back then?
It was really great. It was your typical Smallville, USA. You know, it was just 1950s fun, I guess you'd say. Just everything was just really nice and comfortable.
There was a lot of farmland in that, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah, a lot of farms.
It's changed a lot. It's changed a
Most
lot now.
mostly small farms out there.
Yeah. Do you remember Graceland being up there on that hill way before Elvis had it?
You know, not really. Graceland is on the same street. It was on the Highway 51, which is the same high school I went to, which was right down the road about a mile or so. But I never. I remember seeing it, but I never paid any attention to it. You know, before Elvis got it.
Right, boy, what history it was going to play.
You're not kidding.
Yeah. Now, who were your early musical influences?
Oh boy, now this well, Elvis of course was a big influence, and I met him right after I first started. But somebody you probably wouldn't think of. Do you remember a group called the Hilltoppers?
No, I don't. No.
They were on Dot Records. You know, Dot was probably maybe the first independent label, and it was a label that Pat Boone started on, and Billy Vaughn, and some of those people. But they were a quartet. In fact, these guys all went to school. They went to Western Kentucky, and the lead singer Jimmy Sacca played football up there. But they had some big hits in the '50s, in the early '50s, and I was a big fan. But you know, there were just so many people. I don't think I had like one guy or one person I was just really crazy about. I was influenced by a lot of them, and Memphis was kind of a big melting pot. You got all kinds of music there. You got R&B, you got pop, you got rock and roll, you got country, and I just kind of grew up loving all of it. 'Cause radio was kind of magic to me back then.
Now, was it music that you always wanted to do when you were growing up?
Yeah, you know, I really did. Since I was in junior high school, I thought, you know, that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to write songs and be a recording artist, and that was, you know, I was actually a commercial art major at Memphis, University of Memphis, but you know, I didn't, you know, I just had it in my mind. I wanted to be a singer. I never thought about being an artist. It was just my dreams to be actually what I turned out to be.
Now, didn't I read somewhere that you were also a boxer?
Yeah, I went to Memphis on a boxing scholarship.
Okay, there you go.
Singing's a lot easier.
I would say, yeah. So, how did you get involved in the music field?
Well, you know what? When I was in junior high school, there was a guy in my high school. He was 4 or 5 years ahead of me, and he was big. You know, he was kind of Mr. High School. He was Mr. Everything. He was a great athlete, great football player, and he had this guitar, and he would play and sing on these assemblies we'd have on Friday afternoons sometimes. And you know, I started listening to him, and I thought, wow, this guy, he gets all the girls. So that's when I went out and bought a guitar and went out for the football team.
Okay. So, how did you get? Where was the first label that you got to?
The first label, you mean recording label you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it was a label called Tampa Records, and the way it was a little kind of just a little fly-by-night label out of Hollywood, Florida, and this I think there was a disc jockey in Memphis back then by the name of Dewey Phillips, and he had a show on. Are you familiar with Dewey?
Red Hot and Blue.
Red Hot and Blue. Well, I was when I got into high school, I went up there one night and I waited till he got off the air, and I asked him if he would listen to a couple of my songs that I'd written, and he said, yeah, he would. So anyway, I had my guitar, so I played them for him. He said, you know, those are pretty good. He said, why don't you put a group together and come back? Which maybe to his surprise, I did. You know, a couple of months later, I came back and had a group. And to make a long story short, he recorded these two songs with my band in the recording studios. It was WHBQ Radio, and he ran into the guy that had Tampa Records, and they put the record out, and it was a Mid-South hit. That's the only place it got any exposure, but it was out at the same time Elvis. I think it was either All Shook Up or Teddy Bear, and they went up the charts together all the way up. I never got to number one. I got to number two, and I was always one place behind Elvis, and it was in the charts for about 13 or 14 weeks. But that was my first record, and through that, Dewey got me a deal with Sam Phillips on Sun Records.
Okay. What kind of guy was Dewey Phillips? You don't hear a whole lot about Dewey.
He's hard to describe. Actually, he was pretty much illiterate. He had his own show, and he got his own sponsors. He was always sold out. There was a line of sponsors a mile long trying to get on his show, and he would ad-lib all his commercials. He'd talk through the records, which would make a lot of people mad. The kids, of course, all loved it. He'd sing along with them and just do all kinds of crazy stuff. But and then when Top 40 Radio really kind of came in the early '60s and real late '50s, he kind of, you had to read script and do all this stuff, and he really couldn't do it, and that was kind of his downfall.
Oh, that's a shame.
It's a super talent, though.
That's a shame because you don't have DJs like that now. I mean, not like Alan Freed and Dewey, and I mean later in the '70s like Wolfman Jack. You don't have that nowadays, and I miss that in DJs.
Oh man, I do too, and I hope someday he's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because he deserves it. And you would have guys like Jerry Wexler and Ahmet Ertegun and Leonard Chess. These guys would come down to Memphis and meet with him to see what they thought were hits. They would play their new records for him before they even put them out sometime.
Well, yeah, I hope he does make it into the Hall of Fame. So how was it at Sun Records? When did you get there? What year?
I'd say probably about 1957, 58, right in there.
Okay, so let me see. Jerry Lee was there. He was there until 58. So
yeah, Jerry Lee was there. And Elvis had just left for the Army.
Uh-huh.
Elvis had just left there.
So how was it being in the stable at Sun Records?
Oh, it was fantastic. I mean, they had Charlie Rich and Carl Perkins, Roy Orbison, and Johnny Cash. Mm-hmm. They had all those guys, and it was just, to me, I was just a kid in school. It was just kind of magic. I just loved it.
Now I know Jerry Lee used to sit in on Carl Perkins's stuff. He sat in on Matchbox. Did you ever sit in on anybody else's stuff and play?
No, because I wasn't a good enough player back then. But a lot of those Sun artists did that. Charlie Rich played on a couple of my records, played keyboards on my records. And, a lot of people played with a lot of different other people that, most people don't even know about.
Yeah. Did you see any of the Sun artists perform live?
I've seen pretty much all of them perform live, including Elvis. And in fact, on my shows today, I'll do if I do a full length show, I'll do a Sun Records medley of all those artists.
Wow, you're a lucky man to have been able to see them all live.
Oh, you're not kidding. It was great. I really, I was certainly influenced by pretty much all of them because they were all just great, I thought.
Can you remember any funny stories that you can tell us that happened at Sun?
Oh, gosh, I don't really remember anything that really happened at Sun that funny.
Okay.
There were some things that went on. I remember like Dewey Phillips and Sam Phillips were no kin,
right.
But they were really close. And this isn't that funny, but I remember one night Sam had a tendency to really preach to you. He was something else, and he was preaching to Dewey one night. I was just sitting down there, and Dewey, like a big kid, he took a rubber band and pulled it back and popped Sam right between the eyes with it, and really ticked him off. But not that was that funny, but that's the kind of stuff they did down there.
What kind of guy was Sam Phillips?
Sam Phillips was he's another guy that's hard to describe. In fact, you know, there've been a lot of movies that he's been portrayed in, and none of them even come close to getting the Sam Phillips character right. He was a lot of people would think he was kind of an egomaniac, but it wasn't so much he was an egomaniac. I mean, he was just sure of what he was doing. He believed in himself, and not that he thought highly of himself, but he was on a mission, and he thought he knew what to do to get it. I mean, he could get the most out of a singer. I've seen him grab guys by the jaws and just pull on them and say, "Can you give me a little soul?" You know, he'd get right in their faces. You know, he was kind of intimidating as a producer.
Now, what did you release out of Sun?
I released. I had a couple of records. Let's see, and they were Mid-South hits, but they never really got out of the Mid-South. A song called let's see, Good Lovin'. It was the old remember the old I'm trying to think of the name. It was it not the Coasters, not the Drifters. It's a good call. It had Good Lovin' out, and I put that out. A song called Memories Never Grow Old. A song called Fool, 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 and a song called Dreamy Nights.
Okay. Now, let me ask you something. Other people have complained saying that, they say Johnny Cash and Carl Perkins has left Sun because they felt that Sam was pushing Jerry Lee. Did you ever feel that?
No, I don't think so. The only guy that I ever heard complain, well, Jerry Lee complained about Elvis a little bit. You know, he thought Sam was giving too much time to Elvis, and he thought he was the greatest artist in the world. And and I don't. Do you remember an artist by the name of Billy Lee Riley?
Sure. Flying Saucers Rock and Roll?
Yeah. And he complained a little bit, and Sam, we became to be really great friends like years later, and because I was you know, back then I was kind of the Sun Records tax write-off, I think. But Sam told me one day, he said, some of you guys, he said, I was a one-man operation. He said, I produced them, you know, I sold them, I mastered them, I did everything, and then I promoted them. And he said, I just did not have the time I really needed to give some of my artists the time they really needed.
Right. Now, what was the first song that you ever wrote?
Oh, gosh, Joe, you wouldn't want to hear that. It was a song called Anna Lee. Nobody liked it. No, the only person that liked it was my mother.
Okay. So what was the first song that you thought was really good and it went somewhere?
Well, I thought that one was at the time. But, no, I wrote quite a few songs back then when I was in high school and college, and I went to Nashville a couple of times, and I'd get up there thinking I really had some good stuff, and I'd hear some other things, and I would think, oh man, my songs are not quite as good as I thought they were, you know. So it was kind of an evolving, progressive thing. But the first song that I had, and it was one of my first recordings, was a song that turned out to be a standard called "She Thinks I Still Care."
Yeah, in 1962.
Yeah,
Now, George Jones covered that, didn't they? Well, a couple other people.
George Jones cut it first, had a #1 record with it. A few years later, Anne Murray did it. She had a #1 record with it. And then a few years after that, Elvis did it, and he cut it twice, actually. He had two different versions of it.
Right, I think it was 76 and 1980 on the Guitar Man album.
Yeah, right in there, yeah.
Yeah.
One of them was in Moody Blue.
Now, when was the first time that you saw Elvis live? You mentioned that you saw him live, so.
Well, you know, I was the first kid to have a hit record out of Memphis, out of Elvis. When I had the song that I told you was on Tapper Records, it was a song. It was actually a two-sided hit called "Dream Boy," backed up with "Stay True Baby." And Dewey Phillips and Wink Martindale, who was a disc jockey in Memphis at the time, they put on a big show, and I was the entertainment, me and my band. And after the show, I was leaving, and this guy comes up to me and says, "Hey, Elvis wants to meet you." And I said, "What are you talking about?" And actually, he said, "Come on down here." And Elvis was he was parked in his Cadillac out by the curb, you know. So I walked up, and he never got out of the car. We just started talking, and he told me he really liked my record, and he invited me to come out to his house sometime, and so I took him up on that, and you know, we got to be pretty good friends from that time on. But he was very supportive of me.
Can you tell me the first time you went out to Graceland, what'd you think?
Oh golly, yeah, you know, I remember the first time I went out there because there were a few guys out there. George Klein, who's the disc jockey, he was out there, and Dewey was out there, of course. And the biggest thing I remember about it is that Elvis, at his den, he had this little bar, but it was an ice cream bar, and I remember he made me a milkshake. He made me a vanilla milkshake. It was really good.
Now, I read and I listened to some other interviews that people did with you. You went to the Memphian with him a couple times as well.
Yeah, yep. He would, you know, he'd run a theater all night, and we'd go out about 1:00 in the morning, and he'd take a group of his buddies, and we'd go to the movie, the Memphian. I remember the last time we went because we were all out on his front porch, and I remember his mother saying, "Elvis, now you boys be good, okay?" So he said, "Yes, ma'am, Mama, we will."
Oh, so you met Gladys.
Oh yeah, uh-huh.
What kind of lady
Real
was she?
sweet, real sweet lady.
Yeah. How about Vernon?
I met Vernon also.
Good people.
Yeah, they were good people.
Yeah.
I was not around I was only around his parents a couple of times, really, but they were good people. And she was a loving mother. She was crazy about Elvis.
Yeah. Now let me ask you something. I just heard an interview with Mac Davis, and he said how he went to the theater with Elvis as well, and he accidentally sat in the row that Elvis was sitting in. He later found out that he wasn't supposed to do that. Did you ever catch anything like that where the guys were trying to keep you maybe away from Elvis? I mean, not to be able to get too close. Did you ever see anything like
No,
that?
not really. Nothing like that at all. I do. There was one story that was told by a guy named he was a keyboard player. His last name is Briggs, and he played on a lot of Elvis sessions. And he said the first time he ever played on an Elvis session in RCA, he said there were Elvis liked pickles, and he would eat pickles sometimes when he was recording. And he said there was this big jar of pickles on the table out there, and he said, I thought, man, I think I'll grab a pickle, And so he said he was going for the pickles, and he said all of a sudden this hand wrapped around his lips and said, "Hey, those are Elvis's pickles. Don't touch them."
Jeez. Now, how did it come about that Elvis did your song? She thinks I still care.
This really is a funny story. Now he had a guy that worked for him for years who also worked for Helen Raines by the name of Lamar Fike.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever heard that name or not, but I knew Lamar back then, and he was kind of his his cohort. He'd run around and do errands for him and all this stuff. But when I wrote "She Thinks I Still Care," I don't remember how it happened, but Lamar heard it. He said, "Man," he said, "let me take that song to Elvis." And I said, "Well, hey, that would be great." So I gave him a copy. I gave him a copy of the song, and then I kind of forgot about it. And maybe 4 or 5 months later is when George Jones recorded it. And gosh, maybe 10 years later, I was with Elvis somewhere, and he said, that song you wrote, "She Thinks I Still Care," he said, "I'm going to record that one of these days." He said, "I love that song." I said, "Well, I didn't think you liked it so much." He said, "Why do you say that?" I said, "Well, I played that song for Lamar Fike back years ago, and he said he was going to take it to you." And I remember, I don't know whether you might want to edit this, but Elvis just said, he looked at me and said, "Well, that fat SOB." So anyway, I don't know. Lamar evidently never got it to him, or if he did, he didn't like it at the time. But it was kind of funny. But that song, it's been such a standard, and I got to thinking later on, if Elvis had recorded it first, probably nobody else would have ever touched it.
Yeah, I agree.
And Joe, it's funny. Like it's in the brand new Garth Brooks package that was just released.
Oh, that's good for you, huh?
Yeah, you're not kidding. It's in the he released like a couple of DVDs and about 4 CDs together in one package, and mine's in the DVD.
Hey, can you think of any other story with your time that you spent with Elvis that you think the listeners would like to hear?
Oh, I don't know. He was always. I used to coach. I coached a 5th and 6th grade football team, and he was always going to come out and help me coach, but he never made it.
Oh, that's too bad.
But we talked about it a lot. I think he honestly wanted to, but it was just one of those situations where he couldn't do it.
Did you ever see Elvis live in the 70s?
I'm trying to think. Well, yeah, I guess I did. I saw him early in the very early 70s. But I saw him. I saw him more in the 60s than in the early 60s than I did. In fact, you know what, Joe? I take that back. I did not see him live in the 70s. I just saw him live in the early 50s. I mean, in the late 50s and the early 60s.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever go to Liberty Land with him?
No, never made Liberty Land.
No. Okay. Hey, when was the last time that you talked to Elvis?
Oh, jeepers! I can't. It was probably one of those movie nights, or just one of the nights that I was out at his house. I'd go out every once in a while. I was very popular with the girls because they loved to go to Elvis's with me, and but they never wanted to leave with me. So anyway, but it was just probably one of those nights. I couldn't give you an exact time.
So you knew him right to the end?
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh my goodness! How did you find out that Elvis had passed away?
Let me tell you, this is really wild. It's really weird. I was actually doing a recording session in RCA when we got the news that he died, and everybody thought it was a joke at first.
Jeez, what'd you think?
It was well. I thought it was a joke too. I didn't believe it. I thought somebody was just putting us on, and finally when we realized, they weren't kidding around, it was just everybody just got really sad. It was just like the bottom had fallen out, I mean, nobody wanted to believe it.
Mm-hmm. Did you go to the funeral?
At time. I went to the viewing out at his house, but I didn't go to the funeral.
Boy, that was a mess, wasn't it?
No, you know what? I'm getting crazy. I didn't go to Elvis's funeral. I went to the viewing of his mother when she died out at his house.
Oh goodness gracious! Did you? Elvis must have been devastated.
Oh gosh, yeah. He was really upset. He was crying, and it was pretty sad. They really had a close relationship.
Yeah. Did you? What did you think of the everlasting popularity of Elvis Presley?
I just thought it was amazing. But you know what? I remember, like in the '70s, I had a guy that played guitar with me, and and he knew Elvis and he thought he was familiar with him, but he'd really never heard any of his Sun Records stuff and all. I took him in one day and I said, let me play you some of his really old stuff. And I played, That's All Right, Mystery Train, and some of those Sun singles. And he said, man, that's when he was really good, it wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
But he was just, I can listen to him now, and I'm just amazed. I mean, he was something else, and I just loved his voice. He just sounded great.
I know a lot of people. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I know a lot of people say to me that, especially men, saying, I'm not gay, but man, he was a good-looking man. How was he in person?
Well, he was good looking, and I think that's funny too because he had a lot of guys really liked him. A lot of guys really liked him. I think a lot of guys were jealous of him, but he had a lot of male fans back then.
Yeah, he did. Now, let me ask you something. Now, when did you put out one of my favorite songs? You put out Patches. When did that come out?
Patches came out in '61.
Oh, to this day, is that one of your biggest hits?
Yeah, it was a million seller for me, and it's one of my biggest ones.
I mean, do you think of yourself more of a singer or as a songwriter?
You know what? It happens to whatever I happen to be doing at the time. I think of myself as a singer that writes songs.
Okay. Well,
I guess.
how does it come about that you write a song? Like, let's take "She Thinks I Still Care." How did you come up with the concept for that song?
Well, that's really funny. That's one of the first songs that I had success with, and when I was writing that song, it was more or less about a girl that I was dating. I was kind of in love with her, and I wasn't even thinking about writing a hit song. I was just writing about this girl, and it worked out really neat because. And I'll do this thing. Sometimes I'll sing it on my shows, and I'll tell this story about how the song came about because people are always asking me how did I come to write it, and I'll tell them there was this girl that I was in love with, and I wrote this song about her, and I said then she dumped me, and I said and then later on George Jones did it, and then after that Anne Murray did it, and then Elvis did it, and so on, and I said I finally made enough money off it song to have a contract put out on the girl, and I had her killed.
Jeez, goodness gracious. I want to tell everybody that's not true.
No, not true. In fact, that girl and I, we're friends. I hadn't seen her in a while, but we grew up to be, buddies.
Oh, good. Well, she must be tickled to know that she's the reason that you wrote that song.
Yeah, I would think so. She did know. She knew that she was the reason I wrote it. So, Hey, listen, I'm really grateful to her.
Sure.
She's made a few bucks for me.
Now, what are some of the other songs that have you written?
Well, let's see.
Did you write Wolverton Mountain?
No, I didn't.
What a great song, though.
Now I wrote my second hit. I Saw Linda Yesterday. That was co-written with myself and my friend and partner kind of at the time, Alan Reynolds, who went on to produce all the Garth Brooks records.
Wow.
And then I had let's see, songs that I wrote. Most of the songs that I had success with that I wrote were country songs. And let's see, The Door Is Always Open by a group called Dave and Sugar.
Mm-hmm.
The first time I've thought about leaving, Reba McEntire. I'll Be Leaving Alone, Charlie Pride. Let's Fall to Pieces Together, George Strait. I've Been Around Enough to Know, John Snyder.
Oh, that's, yeah. Wow.
And A Different Light, Doug Stone. And Keeper of the Stars, Tracy Byrd. In fact, every one of those I mentioned were #1 records.
Wow.
And
you're very talented. I mean, but I just want everybody to understand that you also had a great career in your own right, just being a singer.
Oh yeah, well I'll tell you what, it's really funny. It was kind of when I first started, I was thinking more of the singing than I was the songwriting really. But then they just kind of blended in together, and it worked out really well for me. I'll tell you one funny story. Jerry Lee Lewis, my friend Alan Reynolds, we wrote another song back in the early '60s. Well, there was a TV show that came out, I don't know, a couple of years ago called Memphis Beat. It was a cop show. Well, we had the theme song to it, and I started getting BMI checks on this song, and I thought, man, I couldn't figure out where it was from, and found out that it was the theme of this new TV show, and it lasted for a couple of years, but I just thought, man, it just goes to show you never know when something's going to happen with one of your songs, because we wrote this song in the early '60s, and Jerry Lee Lewis recorded it, and in fact he named his band after the song, the Memphis Beat.
Wow. Now, what are you doing now? I want to say one thing first. In 1995, you were inducted into the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Well, I'm still doing pretty much what I was doing before. I never dreamed I'd be doing it at this age, but I'm writing some, and I'm doing quite a few shows. In fact, I'm leaving Monday. I've got 3 shows in Michigan, and then beat this, I've got a show on New Year's Eve in Spirit Lake, Iowa. And I just checked the weather up there, and it's 6 below, and it feels like 22 below.
Oh, my goodness. Better
It'll
you than
be
me.
fun.
You ever thought about maybe writing a book about your career and your time with Elvis and stuff? Other people have.
You know what? I've had more people say you ought to write a book, and I've really never had any desire to write a book. And actually, I think my life. I mean, I've had a blessed life, and I've had a lot of good success. But I feel like overall, I've had kind of a dull life. I'm not an exciting character, and I've never had any desire to write a book.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for talking to us with Elvis Online, Dickie.
Hey, Joe, you're quite welcome. I enjoyed it. Good to
Okay.
talk to you.
Take care.